Morning, everyone. Hopefully, you're reading this in the morning in week 9. We're in the home stretch, right? We're in week 9. You've got one major assignment left, and that's pretty much about it. And this week, we've only got a discussion board and a couple things to pay attention to in terms of resources. And hopefully, what you're doing this week is planning and writing your feature article. But we need to talk more about what's going to go on in that feature article, and that's what this week is really about. First things up, you will have your pitch back beginning of week 9 at the latest. What you'll see is an audio response from me, and that's the way I tend to do a response to pitches, because I'm saying yes to all the pitches, but I'm also giving you my best advice as to how it could make its way from a pitch into an article, and maybe some things to pay attention to or some things to be wary of, and some opportunities as well. So hopefully that'll be pretty obvious when you go to the page that also has the points that you get for doing the feature article pitch. You'll also see, hopefully, a little file from me that you can play in Canvas. Might be a little bit awkward on mobile, but it should be there. So hopefully that'll play natively in Canvas and all will be well. If you have any questions about that or you can't access it, just let me know. I can point you to the right direction as to where to go. But like I said, on mobile, a little bit wacky, a little bit better if you're looking at from a desktop browser. So that's first up. You should also have received, by the beginning of week 9, my comments on a second article that you wrote, or the second essay that you wrote. And hopefully those will also be hanging out in the rubric, as always, with comments at the very end of the rubric and the rubric filled out under the points that you get for that assignment too. So hopefully all that will make sense. If you're ever not seeing these things, just let me know. I can always point you in the right direction. But this week, we've got a couple things to do. So your pitch is done, you've got an idea for your article. You don't have to wait for my ideas or my response to your feature article pitch to keep writing. Keep researching, keep writing. Like I said, I'm not going to say no to anyone. Really, I'm there to offer my best advice as to how this continues on. But one thing I will want you to do is to basically look at a bunch of different feature writing strategies. So below this video, you'll see one link to feature writing strategies, and it's a page in which has a lot of different strategies. Writing like a noob, humor, hook, teasing in with information, section breaks, quoting from people, often subject matter experts, but also everyday people too, using metaphors, doing less and having account for more within the article, not overwhelming your reader with information, describing location, describing people and places and things, offering some kind of narrative arc or building tension in some kind of way, and then avoiding poor use of jargon. So those are a bunch of different strategies. And the reason they're in there is because I think you'd be hard-pressed to find magazine-style feature articles, not essays, that don't make use of at least some of these strategies. And I'm pointing you to, in the discussion board post, to look through the feature writing strategies, then read a couple of things in our sustainability reader, and then decide what strategies you're actually seeing them use. And you'll likely see them use a bunch, and you just have to point out a few. And the whole point of that is so that you recognize things that you can use in your article too. This is how feature article writers get writing done. They often draw on these different techniques, and I'm hoping you draw on these techniques as well. So that's one thing to do, is do a discussion board post. It's our second to last discussion board post. Our last discussion board post is due Monday of finals week, and it's the last thing you have to do, and it's a low-key kind of one. The other thing I want you to pay attention to is, aside from that discussion board post that focuses on the feature writing strategies, is to also look about citing and citation styles within feature articles. This is a feature article. This isn't an essay. Academic essays live inside of institutions like universities and colleges. People don't read 5-paragraph academic essays outside of this kind of institution or outside of this context. They don't. They read what they have to read for their jobs, and they read what they want to read. And we want this feature article to be something that they want to read, not something that they have to read, because it isn't. So you have to make it engaging. And one of the ways to make it engaging is by choosing some of those strategies that are listed on the other page. And another way is to make it not look like an essay in as many ways as you can, even though you might be telling them some information and maybe trying to persuade people of something. So one of the things we do is we don't use internal citations. Every once in a while you'll see one that uses footnotes, but not in a traditional way. So even though you might be adhering to a citation style, you don't do any internal citations. The reason we do that is because magazine article styles don't allow for a big bunch of citations at the end. That's an academic research article. The other things that you've been writing this this term for this class, and probably for other classes too. But a feature article is different. So no internal citations, but you will turn in a references page at the very end, or a works cited page, or a bibliography, or whatever it's called in the citation style that you're still following, even though you're not doing internal citations. And that's in the same situation as if, like, you were writing for a magazine, you would turn your article to your editor, and you would also say, well, here are my references for this. And they'd have someone fact check it. The burden that places on your article, though, is that you have to then be sure that the reader knows, when you're mentioning specific information, where it's coming from. So they have to be able to go like, oh, you mentioned an author, and then you mentioned something specific. You mentioned a book, and you mentioned something specific. So instead of relying on the internal citation to do the citation work, you have to incorporate it in the sentences that you write. That's a little trickier, and it requires us to not just sort of drop some quotes and drop some facts in there with no details surrounding it. We need to introduce all of these different things, introduce quotations, or at least reference where the specific information is coming from, and then turn in a page at the very end that would still be your references page, but that's mostly for your editor. It's mostly for the fact checker. So that's where we are with internal citations, and that's an accepted practice, and I'm asking you to do the same because we're writing feature articles now. We're not writing essays. The other thing you might not need to do is write a thesis. You're going to have a thesis, and it should be clear, but you don't have to write that like sentence or two that happens at the very end of your first paragraph that spells out everything you're going to do in an essay. That's a feature of an essay that you write for college, not for a feature article. And that's kind of what we're aiming for here. So in doing a feature article, you don't have that specific thesis, you don't need to do internal citations. And the last thing is the style can be a lot different. You can write this in a more casual, informal style. You're probably a really good audience to think of when you were thinking about like who would want to read this. I'm a smart person, I like to read, don't have to read about this. It's a topic that I'm not an expert on, but I want to know some more about it. And that's kind of what who you're writing for, right? So think about that kind of person. You don't talk down to that person. You're not doing like baby talk. This isn't for baby talk. I mean, like you're not writing for a fifth grader, and you're not writing for an eighth grader. You're writing for someone who is graduated high school and who is likely college educated. And that's a good space to be in because you're in that space too. So that's what's up this week. Hopefully everybody's on board. If you have any questions about how feedback's showing up for you, let me know. And if you have any questions that are sort of outside of the feedback that you're getting for your feature article ideas in terms of the pitch, let me know too. Happy to answer all those questions. Okay, good luck. See y'all.